We are back with just a few weeks remaining in the NFL season, saving Thursday. My name is Ryan Pinder in Calgary with producer Jack, and there's Tyson Cole out on the left coast with his Denver Broncos jersey on. We got a big one tonight. This will be fun.
I'm excited. Second Broncos game we'll be covering on Saving Thursday, so I'm looking forward to it. Got two legends behind me, got one on my person, so I'm looking forward to it. And first time that we're covering a game that is both of our teams. Ryan, what are you thinking? Are you excited? You nervous?
I've got to be quite frank. I was a very, very huge San Diego Chargers fan. I have definitely been in on the Chargers after the move, but not to the same level. And then after the debacle of the super conservative to hyper aggressive coach and we don't know how to run a salary cap and draft and all that fun stuff, I've been a little bit, but it's a new era. I just figured, yeah, okay, they're on the right track. They got a good GM. They got a good head coach. They're going to be fine. This will be a building block year. And look, they haven't played that well lately. They're still at 8-6. That surprises me. I didn't think they'd be this good. I don't think they are that good in a weird way. I always think the sign of a good team is you can run the ball against everyone and you can make stops on defense. They've been that team for a bit this year, just not lately. They got their doors blown off last week, and they've really missed J.K. Dobbins in the run game. So I, as a Chargers guy, was not going to don the powder blue Tomlinson today out of respect.
Oh, come on.
Don't feel like it's their night. Got to be honest.
Well, I'm happy to hear that, but
I imagine you are. Yes.
Playoff implications tonight. I mean, we'll get to it later, but big game.
We will. It's a good game. It is in SoFi in the confines of Los Angeles. The Broncos have really put together a really nice second half of this schedule where the Chargers have faded a little bit. We'll get into that in a moment. 4 wins in a row for the Broncos. Look at this. Eyeballing a 5th in a row. Meanwhile, 3 losses in the last 4 for the Chargers. But we'll get some league notes before we circle back. We'll have our prop picks of the day. And yeah, there's some interesting implications here in an AFC West that's been dominated by the Kansas City Chiefs for what feels like a decade, but it's probably only like 8-9 years.
Well, you're flirting with it then.
Yes. Just, the Mahomes era. That's it. That's the only time that, Kansas City's been on top and not losing games in division since.
Yeah. Well, thankfully he'll retire soon within the next over a decade, but well,
that's the start of our news today, because I was pretty dang sure it was going to be the Kansas City Chiefs sans that's French for without Patrick Mahomes this Saturday, a short week against Houston, a team that does, get after it with the pass rush. Patrick Mahomes is fine. What originally was looked at is that there might be a few games without him. He is off the injury report, and he is expected to be started, is what Andy Reid is saying. He's going to start this game against Houston, and it's an interesting one. I don't know, they've lost to Buffalo. They only have the one blemish, so Buffalo's kind of there, but they're running away with the AFC West. This is all just now about the bye, and they've been so unconvincing in most of their victories. It's a really, really wild circumstance around the Chiefs and Mahomes, to the point where if they had to play any games without Mahomes, that's the one drive at the end of the game where he usually takes it from a loss to a win. Without him, it's not happening. I really liked Houston early this week when I assumed Mahomes would be out. Now I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. If I've got a hypothetical here. Mahomes has been like full participant in all of practice, which is surprising to see. I feel like he always has some sort of ankle. He's always kind of limping. So he knows how to play through it. But if they win this week against the Texans, just looking at the standings, they'll be at least 2 games up on the Bills still with the tiebreaker of beating them. Do we see Mahomes sit the rest of the season?
Yeah, I mean,
so that'll be 3 weeks. I would say no.
This is week. Wouldn't it be?
Because they'll have the buys. It'd be the last 2 games plus the bye week.
Yeah, but you've got nothing to play for now. You've locked up the division. You've locked up the conference.
But I think what you do is you like, they've got new pieces back. Like Hollywood Brown's going to go this weekend. They just are incorporating Pacheco in. It wasn't that long ago they brought in another new wide receiver. Like, I think they want to get this offense humming a little better, and they started to do that against Cleveland last week. So I think it might be one of those, you get 3 quarters and then we'll put in Wentz or whatever. Like, that's probably how you manage it. You don't want a guy on the shelf for 24 days or something like that. That just doesn't. You need rep.
Yeah.
I know you get to practice and all that, but yeah, it is. I think the Bills need to tighten this up is basically what it comes down to here.
Mm-hmm.
If they can get to the same in the loss column, they're in really good shape because they've obviously beat them. They'd have the tie break. But I think it's a Denver game that's the big one because Denver was right there with them. And if not for a blocked field goal, it's one of those like 5 or 6 ridiculous, how did the Chiefs even win this game games?
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, that's the only thing is they play in week 18. So I feel like, it might be a bit of a stretch to say that he would sit next week, even with a win this week. Yeah. But just because of the reasons you said, they got new weapons. They kind of want to get things sorted before, hopping into the playoffs, especially when you have that, you're going to have that week off. Right. So
and is it season debut for Hollywood Brown? I believe it is. Like he hasn't, he wasn't like got injured early. They lost Rashee Rice early. It's Juju Smith-Schuster comes in. Like, it's just been wild. DeAndre Hopkins, like the number of guys they've churned through, if they just could get some regular set, give them some reps, and then, okay, make sure we're all healthy here. That's the plan because it's miraculous what they've done given the injuries. They haven't looked good doing it, but damn it, that record's unbelievable.
Yeah, and it's just so crazy because a lot of them are 1-score games. Like, they could have easily lost any of them, right?
Well, so last week they covered. That was the 5th time all season they've covered.
Incredible.
And so, like, how many times have they been more than a full score favorite? Like, probably a few, but even some of those they didn't cover, like Carolina, for example. So it's I mean, that's why the Mahomes injury is such a big thing, because if it's a 1-score game and Pat Mahomes isn't there, I think he's making up at least that one possession in terms of how much points he's worth to them when you drop down to Wentz after. Anyway, for everyone that feels like the Patriots are the Chiefs are the new Patriots and evil empire, shaking your fist, damn officials, all that. I mean, we thought we had Mahomes out for a bit. We don't. We have another week now. Maybe we'll make them rue the decision. Send all the karma towards the Houston pass rush. We'll see. But it's not the only quarterback change. There might not be bigger news this week than, Michael Penix Jr., who was drafted very high after Kirk Cousins was given a lot of money by the Atlanta Falcons. He will take over as the quarterback. I believe 1 touchdown pass, 9 picks is the body of work for Cousins heading into the scratching. That is a rough stretch. You often wonder, geez, you go to a rookie, what's it going to look like? It's looked awful with the veteran. I don't know that you could lose anything going to Penix at this point.
I mean, I feel like you have to. Like, that was the last straw. If you're playing a Raiders team and you can only put up 15 points, like, what are we doing here? Like, you're fighting for your playoff lives right now. Like, you need help now that Tampa Bay has taken over. And so, like, hey, if you can barely beat the Raiders, who are very bottom, 32nd ranked team in the league, they would have the first pick if the season ended today. And if you can barely beat them, like, you got to switch it up. I mean, I don't know, like, how confident I would be in Penix because, like, it's been a while that it's been pretty much the whole season that Kirk hasn't played very well outside of a couple games against the Buccaneers. But is Penix ready? That's my question. Like, I know that, I mean, he deserves to start because Cousins deserves to sit. But is that really a move that's going to help you propel you into the playoffs? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I agree on all those fronts. So first off, it is time. Like, Kirk's been that bad lately that it's just like, look, it's not going to happen if he's there. It looks pretty clear that they're not going to win that division with him at the helm the way he's played for the last month. Where Penix Jr. is at is the great wild card. We don't know. The people that have the best clue of that are the people that made the decision to give him the ball instead of Kirk Cousins. They're watching him at practice. They understand how involved or not involved he is in terms of video and understanding that offense. They really like him. They took him 8th overall. And they did that even after they committed a ton of money to Kirk Cousins. It's a spot where, everyone thought, what the hell are you doing here? Why would you sign, all that money, $40+ million a year and then go draft the guy? Well, if he's the quarterback of the future that allows them to win the division moving forward for a while, it's the right decision because you don't have the time machine to go back and undo Cousins, but you certainly can cut him and take some cap hits while Penix is still cheap. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think Shefty tweeted out like what the cap hits would be. It'd be like 65 million if they cut him.
Yeah, it's like 40-ish year one and 20 something year two. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, that makes Russ his cut look great, right?
I was gonna say if there's a case that would say Atlanta just go ahead and cut him, things will be better. It would be Denver when they're gonna Russell Wilson cap hit's gonna ruin them. No, they've been great.
Yeah,
and that is kind of the thing with the NFL cap. It's sort of masquerading as a hard cap. There's always ways to manipulate it. And if you have a good young quarterback on a rookie deal, that's going to help you too.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to the Falcons, like if this wasn't what they wanted to do, like I think they tried to do kind of the same Aaron Rodgers and Jordan Love strategy where you draft a quarterback high who has potential, who's not going to be ready in the first year, let him kind of develop under, a veteran, well-established, good passer in the league at the time. And all the while, that quarterback will help you kind of bring you along the way, make you contender and all that. But it's clearly not how it worked out. And I don't think this is what they wanted to do, but Cousins literally gave them no choice. They lost to the Saints. They put up 6 points against the Broncos, lost to the Chargers, and they only put up 21 points against the Vikings, who was a revenge game. He should be, a little bit more fired up. And also they allow so many points defensively too. So
that was his one touchdown in the last 3-4 games. Yeah.
Wasn't it last week against the Raiders?
Oh, you're right. It was Drake London last week.
It was Drake London. Yeah. The 30.
He had the 4 picks, 2 games in a row. It's been that bad.
It's been brutal.
And the thing is, like, it's not like you just get to, it's this, vacuum. Now is the time to switch. Like, there's a full team there that's watched their, that's my team. We're first in the division. That's our division. Tampa just lost Evans. Tampa just lost Godwin. Like, this is our division. And they've watched it slip out of their hands. And they also get to see the guy who's competing for Kirk Cousins' job. Maybe everyone is ready for Penix, and it might not be perfect, but they can live with the ups and downs more than knowing it wasn't going to work with Cousins, which is kind of what the last month has shown you. You said it. Saints, Vikings, Chargers, Broncos, and not putting up anything on offense.
It's been brutal. Like, those are defenses that you can definitely score points against. And he wasn't able to do one passing touchdown. I just can't believe it. You can't think you have job security if you're throwing one passing touchdown against some of those defenses.
Got to bring producer Jack in on this one. And maybe it had something to do with the interdivision rivalry, but Jameis Winston and his pregame speeches put on pause. Jack?
Thank the Lord. No more Jameis for the rest of the season.
There was a lot of Jameis for the limited window we saw him. I felt like we got a season and a half worth of Jameis, and he only had like 6-7 games. That's a whole lot of Jameis we got dealt.
Yeah, it felt like every week.
And the football lords have given us snow today for this beautiful matchup and a divisional rivalry. Like, he's getting up there doing his preacher thing. It's unbelievable. You're like, holy moly, this is a lot. And you're like, oh, he does this all the time, every week? Oh, wow. And Jack, of course, him rolling your Steelers in one of those weeks, that's tough too.
Yeah, we got our revenge, though.
This is true. To the point where he's not going to play anymore. They've got Dorian Thompson-Robinson. DTR is coming in, and that's horrible news if you have any shares of any of the Cleveland offensive pieces. I know Njoku's been battling some health stuff recently in terms of injuries, but Jerry Jeudy came to life under Jameis Winston. You saw Tillman before the injuries got him explode. Like, it's gone from a dynamic, fun team back to the unwatchable Deshaun Watson level offense, because the defense has always been respectable. This is horrendous news for the viewability of Cleveland games.
Absolutely. I mean, I love Jameis. I think he's just funny. I know it gets old and all that, but watching him play football is exciting because he'll turn the ball over, pick six, like no problem, get back out there and just keep hucking the ball. Like, it doesn't matter. So, like, everybody loves scoring in the NFL. And so that's what he does, which is great. But I mean, I kind of get the move because, look at where the Browns are. They're obviously eliminated from the playoffs. So I guess see what you got in the young guy. I mean, we've already seen him a handful of times and it wasn't great, but you're not really going to get anywhere, throwing Jameis in there. Right. So I don't know. Maybe they think DTR could surpass Watson if he has a good little stretch here. I'm not sure, but I kind of get the move, even though I don't like it.
I hate it. Jack loves it. The Jets owner, Woody Johnson's insane. Speaking of Jerry Jeudy, there was a point where the Jets were very close to acquiring said wide receiver. The owner, when I guess briefed on the potential acquisition, shot it down because Judy's Madden rating wasn't high enough. What?
Who's feeding him this information, by the way? Like, he doesn't play Madden.
I mean,
like,
at
is it
this
his
point, I think he
like,
does.
He does play Madden.
I think he might.
I don't know anything about Woody Johnson except that his team sucks, and maybe he has a lot to do with it or nothing. After reading this, I'm like, I think he has a lot to do with it. Like, literally, you have a scouting staff. The guys that aren't good enough to scout in the NFL, they're creating Madden ratings, not your guys. What are you talking about?
That makes no sense. I just can't imagine he's playing like franchise mode or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know, can't trade for Judy. He's only 77 overall." You know, like it's
too
that's low.
Exactly. It's insane.
I don't get
you
it.
hired the GM.
Mm-hmm.
These are your employees. You think so little of their opinion. You think a video game rating has more value?
It's just some nerd behind a counter putting the stats in, and that's what you're basing your
not even the
real
good
life.
nerds. You should hire the good nerds. It's the I can't get a job in the NFL nerd that's working for Madden. Oh,
I mean, the Jets are going to jet, and I didn't think they'd go this low, but here they are.
I don't know what it is with that city and football teams. It's tough. And tough.
You just saw Devontae Adams. Oh, he's got X factors. I feel like we should bring him in. You know,
wasn't it funny? Like that. At this point of the year, like let's go back to last weekend. Long term, the best thing that can happen to the Jets is losing out. What happens? Vintage Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams game. Like classic 6 years ago in Green Bay. Oh, it's the best quarterback wide receiver doer in the NFL. Like, not now, you idiots. We needed this game a month ago.
Yeah, when we were still in contention. Now we're going for a
now
pick, and now you're trying to win? I don't know. I feel like Rodgers doesn't care at all because at this point he's playing for next season, right? Like the owner came out and said that they don't want to bring him back. So he's like, okay, well, I got to show what I got to do. Screw this team. I don't care if they don't have a good pick.
Devontae doesn't have anything guaranteed next year, or he's easily cuttable, one of the two, if not both. So, you're right. Those guys are going to go play.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hilarious. And for the first week of fantasy playoffs, of course, as well, the hilarity ensued. Let's go to the schedule here. It's a great weekend. This isn't even talking about college ball. For the next 5 days, starting tonight, we have NFL football. Look at this. Thursday 1, Saturday 2, Sunday full slate, Monday 1 game, nobody on bye. 2 more weeks until playoffs after this. Let's bleeping roll, Tyson.
I'm excited. And this is the time where it's crunch time. You know, this is where it's like the witching hour, but for the regular season, you know, like this is when playoff bursts can be made and people get eliminated from the playoffs. Now, what do you think about this? Did we talk about this last week about how adding the 7th game or team to make the playoffs kind of ruin the parity in the league? Did we talk about that last week?
No, but it is weird when there's only one bye. Now there's 6 wild card games, and it definitely feels different when there's only one bye versus the pair, because a lot of really, really good teams now have to play wild card week, where traditionally, like I think of Detroit or Minnesota, one of those teams, Buffalo, like those caliber clubs, Philly, like 2 of those 3 teams. 3 of those 4, whatever it is, like they're going to play in wild card week, and it's like traditionally they rest. It's a huge advantage to the 1 seed over the 2, which we haven't seen. And then, yeah, you're right. You're kind of into these. I don't think that's a good football team getting into the playoffs at the bottom of that.
Absolutely. And just looking at the playoff race right now, there's 3 teams in the AFC, the Bengals, the Dolphins, and the Colts. They're all 6-8, but they're all 2 games back of the final wild card spot.
It's so like AFC. Like
that's honestly what I mean. Like, so now, like, it used to be fun because there was parity. Like, can you imagine if
let's flash the standings again, Jack. Sorry, go ahead, Tice. Like, yeah, in the old setting, right now in the AFC, there's nothing to play for. Like,
no, but in the new setting, in the old setting where 6 teams make it, this would be the biggest game of the year.
What a huge battle. And all of a sudden the Ravens Steelers game becomes huge because you might have the same record as whoever wins or loses tonight.
Exactly. But now, like, all these teams are pretty much locked up. They just need pretty much one win as long as they have the tiebreakers, and these the other teams don't win out. Like, and they're already made the playoffs. Like,
Jack was talking about the other day. Like, if the Steelers don't beat Baltimore, it's pretty much kick up your feet time and stay healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the old format wouldn't have allowed that the same way. Maybe I'm crazy, but they'd still be fighting for that second seed potentially. Or
I do think this year there's been a lot of bad teams though too. Like the Bengals at 6-8, the Dolphins at 6-8. Like I would have thought they would have been right in there to the end. Like I remember last year for the Steelers, it came right down to last week. You need teams to lose, them to win, someone to get in.
Well, and even Miami, you think about if they had two healthy the whole year, they're probably another.
There's just been
wins.
a lot of really bad football teams this year.
Yeah, for sure. And like, how long has this been happening? Is it the second or third year?
Second year, I believe that they've had.
Second year, yeah. And I mean, like Jack said, we didn't have that last year, so it's probably just the year like this.
Yeah,
year,
maybe.
Right?
And the NFC feels totally different too. To be fair, you've got the West is still up for grabs, the South's up for grabs, and the North is an absolute crazy.
Yeah, like I asked
three really good teams. Like, the NFC is much more compelling.
I asked this to you yesterday. Like, when's the last time with 3 weeks left in the season that this is pretty much locked up? I don't remember.
I don't either. Yeah, 3 weeks. And in the old setting, it was only 2 weeks ago with a different play. And that happens a lot. The last 2 weeks, sure, but 3, that's no way 3 weeks things are sealed like that for the whole conference. Like Denver essentially needs one win and they're through. They could get that as soon as tonight. Chargers have New England and Vegas to close out the schedule. All they need is a win or two. They might get it tonight. If they don't, they got a couple doormats trying to pick high anyway. Like, it's just not a compelling finish. Man, if somebody had finished off a Kansas City game a little better, that could be interesting at the top, but it's not. They got a 2-game lead on Buffalo.
Yeah.
Whatever. I mean, give us a call here.
I would have just loved, and I know, like, I'm a Broncos fan, so I want them to make the playoffs, but like, how exciting would it be tonight if
this feels like a game where it's like, it could be a good game, but it's like, as for the ramifications, like, no, both these teams are starting on the road wildcard week. Like, so you're going to go to one city versus another. Who cares?
Yeah. Like, this could be, in the old format, this could be like winning you're in or losing you're out.
Game of the year type stuff, right?
Exactly.
It just doesn't have any of those vibes. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So busy schedule. For the next 5 days, we have NFL football. Get that Bet Victor account loaded up. Lots to do here. We're going to get you some prop bets for tonight. This is Bet Victor season 4 in the next 5. You'll love to see it. Jack, let's talk about the injuries on these two clubs. I mentioned how these teams are rolling. 4 wins in a row for the Broncos, 3 losses in the last 4 for the Chargers. I imagine injuries play a small role in that. They play a role in everything, it seems.
Yeah, that's what, like, injuries are playing a big role in this because the Broncos are pretty healthy and the Chargers have a lot of injuries. So on the Broncos side, Jaleel McLaughlin, running back, backup. He's kind of more involved in the pass game. He'll be out tonight. And then Riley Moss, who's been a very good corner. I actually want to ask you about him, Tyson. He's going to miss his 3rd in a row. Sneaky, very good. Where did this guy come from?
Oh, I don't know. I think he's a rookie last year, and he didn't get. I don't think he got much playing time, but this year he became the CB2, and he's been phenomenal. Like,
very good.
Yeah,
so you got him and Surtain, nicely done
for sure. And like, it's scary because you don't typically want to target Patrick Surtain, but you also don't want to target Riley Moss, right?
Sounds like a good defense.
Yeah, he's been cruising this year, so I really like him. He also made the Will Compton's all-white team, if anyone saw that.
I did see that.
I have not.
And on the Chargers side, they're a lot more banged up. Will Dissly's going to miss his 2nd in a row. Their tight end. He's been a good weapon this year for Justin Herbert. Stone Smart played 66% of the snaps at tight end last week.
And it doesn't matter who's there. The tight ends produce under Herbert because the offense requests them to, even under the old coaches. You've seen all kinds of like ho-hum dudes turn into like legit players with Herbert at the tight end position. And Dissly kind of was that. No one really, he's probably a blocking tight end. Maybe he'll have 2 catches, 30 yards. No, with Herbert, it was like 5, 6, 7 receptions, upwards of 70 yards in some contests. And so Smart now is starting to get those. I think even after the injury midweek last week or in the game, he finished with like 60, 70 yards. You're like, it's just whoever's there is going to get targeted. That's how Herbert rolls.
Yeah.
Sticking on the offensive side, Zion Johnson, left guard, is questionable. Looks like he will probably play, though. And then on the defensive side, they're pretty banged up. Otio Ngwababam, I don't know how to say his name.
I believe that part.
He's the defensive tackle, big guy in the middle, 326-4, big run stuffer. He is questionable. Denzel Perryman has a chance to play. He's missed 4 in a row. And then on the back end, Cam Hart, he's cornerback. He is going to miss this game. And then Elijah Molden is doubtful free safety. Yeah. They have Marcus May and Tony Jefferson kind of filling in there.
Wow.
They've
had a couple games with some, like, I think it was against Atlanta and Kirk Cousins, where they came up with a bunch of turnovers back there. A few of those guys are dinged up now. Derwin James is still all right, but like they're not at their healthiest right now. And interestingly, the Broncos did just have a bye a couple of weeks ago. That's worth mentioning too. The Chargers is way back in week 5.
Week 5.
Mm-hmm.
So the worst bye.
That helps a bit this time of year. You love that week 5 bye in week 6, but not now. All right. What's the data telling us about these defenses, Tyson? Let's walk through that.
All righty. We've got a couple green, which is exciting because last week we didn't have too much.
A lot more green here. I like this. Green means go. Yeah. The brightest green is right by quarterback passing attempts. And if you're first time joining us, that means for Justin Herbert, green means go, not for the Denver defense. Quarterbacks against the Denver defense have the 4th highest average pass attempt per game.
Yeah, that was the biggest thing that kind of stuck out to me for this matchup. We'll get into some around that later, but another couple green ones here. Receptions to the wide receiver for the Broncos. They are good at limiting yards relatively compared to where they are allowing receptions. So that's a good thing here. Against running backs, I thought the biggest discrepancy here is Broncos are great on the ground. Against opposing running backs, 27th in the league at 80 rushing yards per game, but they're really not great against receiving backs and like backs out of the backfield. I mean, I wish we had J.K. Dobbins in this match, but we don't. 7th most receiving yards to the running back, 40 per game. And you kind of get that on the same side for the Chargers. They allow the 13th most rushing yards, but 23rd receiving yards to the running back. So that was kind of the only thing that really stuck out here. There's a lot of Chargers here where they're just kind of middle of the pack. You know, they don't allow too much of anything, but they don't allow a few of anything, right? So
they were the top defense in terms of scoring, like toughest to score against in the league, not that long ago. And they're still near the top, but they just allowed 40 to Tampa Bay. You heard the injury report. Baltimore hung 30 on them not long ago. They let Cincinnati go 21 points in a row against them. It's not what it was. And I think a big ingredient for how the Chargers operate was Harbaugh comes in and he says, I'm not going to ask Herbert to do too much too soon. We're going to run the S out of the ball. And with Dobbins and Edwards, it was working at the beginning of the year. What's changed is that Dobbins is hurt. They're not even able to get three yards a pop often anymore. And they've said, okay, Herbert, you're going to have to throw the ball for us. But what that's done is now it's a couple incompletions and a bad run, and you're giving the ball back. Before, it was like they'd sap 6-7 minutes before they gave you the ball back. And I think that was a big ingredient in A, keeping the other team's offense off the field, but B, just, limiting the amount of opportunities another team has to go down the field and get points.
Absolutely. And when you don't have J.K. Dobbins who can, burst out a long run, right? He's got that explosiveness despite all his knee injuries. And you have Gus Edwards who's so inefficient on the ground. You become predictable. Right? Like, Harbaugh wants to run the ball, so he'll probably get at least one run. But then after that, once it's 2nd and 9, you know exactly what they're doing. They're going to have to throw, and they're probably going to be targeting the short area of the field. So you play a little closer to the line, and then they can't really get much downfield. So that's why, like you were saying, it's a lot of 3 and outs kind of, right? Because you become predictable.
Yeah. Okay. So all this said, let's dive into some of our props, our official picks of the week. Wide receivers we're liking here. We've got a few targeting wide receivers. Let's start with those.
All righty. Little Ladd McConkey. Over 69 receiving yards. He's cleared 3 out of his last 4 games. Averages 82.5 receiving yards per game. And he's cleared 4 out of his last 6 at home, also averaging 82.3 yards per game. The Broncos are on the 5th most man coverage at 35%, and McConkey destroys destroys man coverage, which is kind of surprising. I feel like a lot of the bigger guys destroy man coverage because they can go up and get the ball, but we little lad's just a slot guy,
Shifty, though.
And it's
very elusive,
very shifty. He could definitely burn you, but it's not just the Chargers that, he's great against man. It's actually like around the league. He's the 5th highest wide receiver, according to PFF grade, against man coverage. So just absolutely destroys on like a league basis. He's caught 21 of his 27 targets this season for 15.9 yards per reception. Obviously, we know wee little lad is a slot receiver, runs 70% out of the slot. And PS2, like he's a shadow corner, but he rarely goes to the slot. I think it's like 30 slot snaps he's had this season.
He might have more Quentin Johnston than he will have Ladd McConkey, is what you're leading me to believe.
Exactly. And we have Jaquan McMillan, Jaleel. I don't know what his first McMillan. Jaquan McMillan. We'll go with that. He hasn't been great. He's been targeted a lot. Over the last few weeks, he's averaging 6.3 receptions on 9.7 targets for 72.7 receiving yards over that span. And he allows a lot of yards per reception, yards after catch, 30 per game, which is great for slot receivers. And against slot receivers this season, Broncos allow the fewest catch rate, but rank in the top half of the league in terms of receiving yards. And so I saw Ladd McConkey. I wanted originally to go with his receptions, but that got bumped up to 6.5. I'm just going to take his yards against a cornerback who's allowing a lot of yards after catch and yards over the last 3 games.
Yeah, and Johnson and Palmer, they're going to head downfield more. That's where we've seen Johnson effective. That's what Palmer's best at. That's going to keep those 2 cornerbacks we talked about off the top busy. So the softer part of the pass defense is exactly what Ladd's lined up against. I like it. I've laddered it to the moon.
Yeah, if you can ladder it, I would too. I just want to show you something that I found about Quentin Johnston, which I thought was unbelievable. He's maybe the worst wide receiver against man coverage I've ever seen.
Really?
He's been targeted 22 times this year, has 5 catches for 27 yards. He's got a 44 PFF grade, which is one of the lowest I've ever seen.
And so what you're saying is Denver plays the 5th most man. He's no good against man. That might even be an opportunity to hit the under on Q.
Yeah, because if he's
never mind the drops. The drops have been an issue since the moment they drafted him.
Yeah, and he's going to be drawing PS2. Like, if you're already bad against man, you might get PS2 shadow on you. You're not catching anything. I might take under his half a yard.
Jeez.
Just kidding. Just joking.
Yeah. Aggressive take. Okay. Next, let's go to the other side. Other receiving core, other side of the football. Let's go.
Courtland Sutton, over 63 receiving yards. He's cleared 6 out of his last 7. He did miss last week with 32, but they didn't really need to throw the ball towards the end of the game, and it wasn't really going his way anyway. But in those 7 games, he's averaging 85.8 yards per game. He did struggle against the Chargers earlier this season. Well, he didn't struggle. He just didn't hit this line. He had 53, I believe. Okay. But the biggest discrepancy here for me is how targeted Sutton is against zone. And the Chargers run the 3rd most zone coverage at 77%, somewhere around there. He's got 61 targets. The next highest is Devon Vele with 28. So nearly tripling the next highest wide receiver. So he just always gets the ball, and he doesn't have a high catch rate. It's only 57 on the season, but I'm just trusting the volume, especially with how banged up this Chargers secondary is. There was a lot of guys that Jack read off that are out this game. So Sutton should be able to get these yards, especially bouncing back after a down week. And I mean, if Denzel Perryman is back, I mean, the Broncos can't run the ball as it is, but with Perryman in, they've only allowed one 100-yard rusher this season. So they can't get anything on the ground. I believe Bo Nix is going to be throwing a lot, and so we'll take his number 1 option here to go over his yards.
Last 6 weeks, 8 for 100, 7 for 122, 6 for 70, 7 for 78, 8 for 97, 6 for 102. That was all before last week's off week, but for 6 weeks in a row, he's destroying this number. It's not even close.
Yeah.
He's been the go-to guy, and as Bo Nix has gotten comfy in this rookie year, it's not like we've seen other guys. They've all had games that are good, but it's Courtland Sutton, the Grand Canyon, and then the next option. He's been the man.
Absolutely. Yep. And so I think it's going to be a tight game. I don't know if you think that, but I mean, he's going to have to rely on Courtland Sutton, and he should be peppered with targets against zone coverage like he has been all season.
Let's Jack, I'm going to throw a curveball here. Let's go to the game odds. Line over under. I should have tackled this earlier. We got a little too excited about the Green Means Go data chart. But you're talking about high scoring or low scoring. That's our segue here. 41.5 is the over under. It was 39 when these two teams connected back in week number 6. It was a 23-16 win for the Chargers. Denver has only lost twice since then. Chargers have lost 4 times. We've talked about the trends of late. This line was 3 yesterday. It's moved today. There's money coming in on Denver from compared to where it was at +3. And the over-under is telling you what's the implied score here. We're talking like a 21 to 22 to 19, something like that. Like it's not going to be crazy high scoring is what the book's telling you.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll be high scoring, but I do think it'll be close. So it makes sense about the 2.5 point spread. If we're just looking in terms of number of bets to number of money, it's actually 68% of the money or of the bets are coming in on the Broncos, but it's only 64. So a little bit more money coming in on the Chargers at the -2.5 here.
Interesting. Yeah. And that line just changed. So that's always interesting to see how that, would I like the Broncos at 3 more than 2.5? Hell yeah. Do I now like the Chargers at 2.5? Well, not necessarily. I don't know. So that's, and look, the other thing that we talk about, it's not easy to win both halves of a divisional matchup if there's both good teams.
Absolutely.
You usually split these things unless it's the Chiefs. The Chiefs just win every divisional game ever because they've got maybe the greatest quarterback certainly since we've seen Tom Brady in the league. Like it's more often than not with 2 good teams, they just split these things.
Yeah. And I mean, like the Broncos, they were 3-3. Like after their loss to the Chargers, they were 3-3 and they had lost 2. Yeah. Like they weren't the team that they are now, that they've, been on a hot streak, been winning a lot of games. And we've seen kind of the Chargers do the opposite, right? They were hot to start the year and then they kind of are fizzling off over the last little bit. So, I mean, we'll see how it plays out, but I definitely agree with the 2.5 point spread, and I ain't picking either side.
Yeah, I'm taking the Broncos on that, and the over/under is tough for me because it's like, I don't know. I know it feels very appropriate that's tough for me to go on either side of that. I don't see an explosive, but I also could see someone making a big play here or there. Not enough for. It's going to be a lower scoring game because that's kind of exactly what it was last time we saw these 2 teams. That's why we probably feel that way. Let's get to our third prop pick of the day and maybe a bonus 4th. We got a couple extra minutes today. Kamani Vidal is a guy that was drafted and brought in with a little bit of a claim. Everyone knew it was going to be Dobbins and Gus Edwards to start the year, but when would the rookie eat into that? And he really hasn't until the Dobbins injury, and Gus Edwards just been incredibly ineffective, and that's really opened the door the last 2-3 weeks for Vidal to carve out a role of his own here. He's better at things than Gus Edwards. It's not like let's get him a look. It's we know he's our best option when we're doing X.
Absolutely, and I mean you kind of alluded to it. Gus Edwards is pretty much a negative in the passing game. Kamani Vidal over 12.5 receiving yards. He cleared this line last week, and it's a small sample size. Don't get me wrong. Like he's only had a reception in 3 of his 6 or 7 games. So
post Dobbins injury, and when it's been him and Edwards, it's a really small sample, but there's arrows pointing towards the rookie at this point.
Absolutely. So just last week, I went full nerd. So Vidal outsnapped Edwards 32-6 on passing snaps last week. So he's the clear receiving back, and when they're throwing the ball, Vidal's likely on the field. He ran 16 of those 32 routes, so 50% route participation. That's fine. Edwards only had 2, so it wasn't great. But as we showed on the sheet, Broncos are the 7th most receiving yards to running backs, averaging 40 per game.
Yeah.
So looking at his charts, Vidal's first game of the season was against the Broncos, and he had 40 receiving yards in that game.
Really?
So he's already done it against his defense. So. Okay. And that was with Dobbins. So now that Dobbins is out, Vidal's just going to get more snaps on passing snaps, and he should be able to clear this line. I thought I got it at 10 on Bet Victor just last night, and it's already moving. So people are already on it, but I still do like the 12.5 because he had 13 last week. So I like that. And just going back to the Broncos, they've allowed over their last few games here. Jonathan Taylor didn't go over his receiving line, but Nick Chubb, Jerome Ford, Amir Abdullah, Bijan Robinson, Jamal J. Ryan, Kareem Hunt, Derrick Henry, Miles Sanders. They all went over their line and had 20 plus. So if you can ladder it up to 20 plus, I don't hate it either.
That's the sound my phone is making right now. Where is the ladder to 20 plus? Yeah, I'm on it. Okay. I like it. Very good.
Yeah.
Now, the biggest green we had in your data sheet was actually quarterback pass attempts. We don't have it in our bets, but it doesn't mean we didn't like it. We talked about it extensively. We've had some bad luck chasing quarterback attempts, but I do see a script where Justin Herbert heaves the ball a bunch. If you get a Broncos lead and an inability to run for any sort of efficiency from the Chargers, it's going to be a lot of Herbert. And we have seen a lot of games like that. It just hasn't been recently.
Yeah. And I mean, you made a good point before we went live, but what I was thinking is no Dobbins, and Gus Edwards is so inefficient. He can't run the ball. Like, they're going to have to throw a bunch. But like you said, in the games without Dobbins, he hasn't hit this line. So that was kind of surprising, right? Like, you'd figure they would need to throw the ball more because they're not getting it on the ground, but they haven't been doing that. Now, they have been playing worse, and last week was a blowout, which probably played a little bit into it. But, I mean, if you just look at this Broncos team, we already showed fourth most pass attempts on the season. But over their last 3 games, to Anthony Richardson, Jameis Winston, and Gardner Minshew, they've averaged 46 pass attempts per game.
Yeah, it's just
and his line's, 32, 33 and a half? Like
2.5, I think, when I
so low. So if you said the Broncos are up, and they can't run the ball. The Broncos have the 27th best rush defense. They're going to have to throw with Herbert. This is pretty much playoff game, right? Both teams want to win. Big divisional game. Like, I like that spot a lot.
Denver 9-5, Chargers 8-6. A Chargers victory would even their records, but they'd have both wins. So it's essentially a full game. They'd be ahead in the standings based on that tiebreak. So it is one that you're, and I just think, the Chargers could win. This is going to have to be Herbert heaving the ball. It's not going to be this sustained long drives handing off to running backs. That hasn't worked for them the last month.
Absolutely.
One of the reasons their attempts didn't get up is they were in these very low scoring, ineffective offensive games against the Kansas City defense, the Atlanta defense. Tampa allowed them a bunch early and then just completely silenced them in the second half. This is not an offense that's moved very well of late.
No, and
he's probably heaving a bunch tonight.
It's going to be all game script, though, like you said.
It is.
I feel like, I don't know. I mean, an ascension of the run game is throwing it to the running back, which hopefully plays into Vidal if you're really struggling on the ground, but also like Stone Smart. The Broncos are getting targeted. I didn't even bring this up, but Broncos are being targeted at the highest rate on the season to the tight end position. So, yeah. But I like Ladd. So both over the middle guys, I think they're just going to have big games. So that could be another ascension of the run game, low A dot, all that. I mean, so we'll see. That could lead into the pass attempts, but it will be all about game script tonight.
Stone Smart over under 32 yards.
I like over there. He hit that in half last week.
Yeah.
Like, I think it
went
was
5 for 50 last week.
Disley got dinged up. I don't know exactly when, but it wasn't like Smart was the guy out of the gate. And
I think it was the game before that.
Was it? Well, he did it too in that game then, whatever.
Yeah, right, Disley missed last week.
Yeah.
My apologies.
But you're right. Like,
similar story. It was like, who's going to come in? Like, oh, and there's Stone Smart with another. So you're like, okay, that's who it is. Interesting. Yeah.
There's a lot of angles tonight.
Nice there are. And it's nice when we get a dance floor with all those green squares rather than we've had some stoplight Thursday nights. We've also had some green ones that worked really well. None would have been better than that Cincinnati-Baltimore Thursday nighter we saw where
I'll never forget that night.
And Jamar Chase and Chase Brown all went off, and Lamar had a good day. It was wild. That was quite something.
Yeah. Hopefully we get a little bit of that tonight, but probably not.
Smart's last 2 games, 3 for 54 and 5 for 50. So even in the game Disley gets hurt, he gets 54 essentially in most of the second half there. So I've looked at that as well. Okay, fellas, final bit of business here. What is saving your weekend? We usually call this saving Sunday, but in this glorious week 16, what is saving Saturday, Sunday, Monday? 3 days in a row, Jack. Get the couch pillows all puffed up and ready to go here.
Let's go. I'm pumped for Saturday.
I understand why. There's 2 NFL games, a bunch of good college games, but one of those NFL games, your boys have a huge divisional matchup.
You're not talking about the Texans-Chiefs?
You know what? I'm excited for that as well. Now that Mahomes is playing, it's just going to be a great day of football. And a little behind the curtain tomorrow on our other show is going to be a bit of a mess. We'll be having some drinks. I might be hungover Saturday, but I'm going to get right back into it because there's so many good games, including my Steelers in Baltimore. 6.5 spread there. I'm not too sure what to think. TJ Watt is going to play. George Pickens is not going to play. Their offense has not looked good without him.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Something seems off, and it's, they haven't had that.
They don't have their best
get
receiver.
A catch and you need a catch guy.
So I'm not too sure. They've dominated the Ravens. I think we showed yesterday on our other show, last 9 of 10 low-scoring games. Classic AFC North football. I
want to see I will find the over-under on that, where it is, because we looked at it, and it's like the last 9 meetings, like all but one.
All unders. Yeah, Lamar's
were like under 32.
Lamar's really struggled against.
Wow.
It's
so
45.5.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like
45.
Under by 10 is what the average is on that. Maybe more than that. It's crazy how low scoring they've been, and I get it. This time of year in Baltimore, and we'll see. That should be a good game. I'm surprised the line's that big.
Yeah. Do we not like the Steelers plus points?
At that number, yes. If you're telling me on neutral site you like Baltimore by 3.5, I don't really buy it. Now if you're telling me TJ Watt wasn't playing, I'm like, okay, but he's in. That's has the line moved since he's been?
I'm looking right now. Still the same.
Like, that's crazy to me. How can the line be the same when Watt was kind of thought he'd miss earlier in the week, and now he is in? And you're like, that's like a top 3 defensive player in the sport. What are we doing here?
That's a player. There's not a lot of players that actually move lines if they're in or out. That's a player that would move the line.
100%.
So, to hear that it hasn't moved, isn't Tomlin just a freak as a road underdog too?
Yep.
And against Baltimore.
And
is this game?
You have to take that number at 6.5. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not as locked in on the AFC North. Jack, is this game pretty much for the division?
I would say so. I think if the Steelers lose, there's still a way they can win the division. It'll come down to divisional record, obviously.
But it's the same. They've beaten Baltimore once.
Yeah.
They would have both games in the season series. That's like another game in the standings.
So if they win this,
they'd be up 2 then.
They'd be up 2. I think they clinch with a win here.
I agree. I think that makes sense.
And then you're pretty much just riding your last 2 weeks in the playoffs. You're not going to finish first. So is there a huge difference between finishing second, third, fourth? I don't know.
You're at home either way.
Yeah, you're at home either way. Maybe you're trying to avoid that Baltimore game again, but
maybe not.
Maybe not.
I'm just hoping that one of us gets to play each other in the playoffs.
I do not want to see wild card weekend against the Broncos. That gives me.
I think you would love to see it against the Chargers. They don't look like a football club built for the playoffs right now.
Yeah, I think
you don't think Russie's gonna get up for that game? Team that just cut him out, made him look terrible.
That would be fun. That would be great. Some other gems on the weekend, fellas. Divisional leaders, Minnesota. I know they're technically not, but they can easily pass Detroit here. Detroit's got a ton of injuries. They play them one more time. That's going to be a monster game in Week 18. And Seattle's getting chased by the Rams here. That's an intriguing division as well. Fun game there. Philly, Washington. I think everyone likes Philly, but Washington, let's see what you're made of. This is a really good team, and Washington hasn't been inspiring the last month. And then the other Saturday game's a gem, Kansas City, Houston. I'm waiting to see Houston get right here ahead of the playoffs. And the one thing they do well is get at the quarterback. Mahomes, if he's a little gimpy, who knows? Plus, I don't cover.
Yeah.
Anything else in there, Tice?
Oh, I mean, I'm just excited. I'm looking at the NFC playoff thing right now. The Saints are not eliminated, but they're 4 games back of the last playoff spot with 3 games to go. So I don't know how that works, but
I think it would be because it's got to be something in division. If both Atlanta and Tampa fall on their face, that's the only way it's going to be.
Right. Yeah. Right? Thank you. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for that matchup. You just kind of highlighted the Vikings and the Seahawks. There's a lot to play for, but I mean, if the Seahawks win and the Commanders lose to the Eagles, which is very possible, I mean, they'd be tied. So we would have a little bit of a race down the stretch. And also Week 18, Rams play the Seahawks.
That's another gem. There's a couple in Week 18. We'll talk about it next week. We'll be doing one more Thursday show. We thank you for being with us. We say thank you to Bet Victor. Enjoy tonight's festivities. Enjoy the football, NFL variety for the next 5 days. Thanks for watching. This has been Saving Thursday, presented by Bet Victor.